I have an associate producer who is a hip, young, cool Zoomer. We call him Professor Jacob. He's this cool. He's like 12 years old. And he said, Mr. Knowles. Yeah? You got to go on the whatever podcast. I was like, what's that? He's like, and he showed me. And I said, I've seen these clips everywhere.
Yeah.
This thing is great. I was like, there's no way they'd want me to go on that show, though. I don't know. He said, no, they do. They want you to go. I said, let's go. Let's go. Now, there was a conflict of intentions here. Because the point of going on that show is to make fun of these poor, ignorant young women. That's the whole point. And you make fun of them, and then they look stupid, and then you get a great viral clip. And I just thought, man, that's kind of mean. I'm not going to California to go just make fun of these young women. Because it's not their fault. Most of them grew up in broken homes, and they don't know anything, and they're attending some stupid school that doesn't teach them anything, and they don't know. And they live in a swipe culture, and they're all being exploited and used, or they're on OnlyFans. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do this show a little differently. I'm going to do the show on their side. So often, Brian, who I like, the guy who runs the show, often it was not me and Brian against the girls. Often it was me and the girls attacking Brian's points of view.
But were you switching up your principles then?
No, because the girls are wrong. I mean, I pointed out when they were wrong plenty of times too. But Brian, well, he's probably more correct than them on some like basic things. Brian said he didn't want to get married. So you don't want to get married. That's gay. You know, I'm making this accusation a lot now.
Why do you keep using that term?
I'm like that guy.
That's a not very inclusive term. You know that.
It's very inclusive. There are a lot of gay guys.
Gay?
So I'm including them.
Why can't you just say you disagree?
Because I
think,
disagree,
like,
but specifically I disagree because that view is gay.
Right, but okay, but the problem that I have with calling something...
Why are you gay?
Why are you gay? You are gay.
Well,
you are gay. Like that guy on the Ghana.
I have a problem, I feel like, with, at least if I'm trying to understand your motive, like your desired outcome of going on these shows and speaking the truth or whatever, your truth, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's going to yield good benefit or desired results if you say things are gay in a derogatory way. Because it's not like someone maybe who's gay is going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, this guy, he thinks all gay people are bad. Or,
listen,
you know,
I'm an icon of the gay community. You know, I have plenty of friends. Look, I lived in New York. I lived in LA. I went to the gayest university on
what university?
Earth, Yale.
Okay.
So they say 1 in 4, maybe more at Yale. You know, and I have a disproportionate number of homosexually identifying friends and people with variously eccentric views. But you know, my view is that we shouldn't recommend the LGBT activism. I think that's not a good thing to recommend.
But it's not recommending that. It's just, like I said, if your desired result is to hopefully find a middle ground where you can both agree on something.
No, my desired result is to arrive at the truth. That's my desired result.
But don't you
is it for yourself or to help other people arrive at the truth?
For everybody.
But if you're trying to help other people arrive at the truth, calling something gay in a bad way in front of another gay person, I'm not even saying
it's really good. I think it's really good to do because
I think people they recoil when you attack at like
maybe you recoil. I don't think a lot of other people.
I think a lot of
people grew up on the playground saying, hey, that shirt's really gay, ha ha ha, and then everybody laughs. I think everybody used this kind of language until 5 minutes ago, and in no way is it mocking or attacking any people who have kind of eccentric sexual desires or anything like that. I think it's just kind of gay.
But even if it alienates,
I think this whole conversation.
But imagine it alienates 1 or 2% of the audience. Is that worth it?
In this case, I'm using it in a very specific way and intentionally, much as I would use the word eradicate at my CPAC speech with regard to transgender ideology.
So it's
I'm using it
attention.
No, that's what the liberals accused me of, but that's because they have difficulty understanding words. The reason I use the word eradicate there is because I specifically was referring to uprooting an entire ideology, root and branch. And the reason I use gay specifically in this case is, one, because it's kind of funny and we've all used it, even though we all politically correctly now pretend that we don't. We're all clutching our pearls. But the other thing, we all pretend that the homosexuals are offended by it. They're not. Homosexuals are outrageous people a lot of the time, and they're men a lot of the time, and they're tough guys. It's like macho man in the Village People. The reason I'm using it specifically here is because gay refers to an entire view of the sexual ethic. A view of the sexual ethic that views men and women as indiscernible and substitutable for one another, and a view of the sexual ethic that is ultimately sterile, that separates means from ends. And so I'm doing that very intentionally.
You're
I'm doing
using the esoteric way, right?
But I don't think that's so esoteric. I think it's playing on the proper meaning of the word, and it's showing people the issue from a perspective that has been kept from them.
But when you just say the word gay, no, without any context behind it, people are not going to put that meaning the way that you meant it. They're not going to do all the background thinking of, oh, he means it like this, and if you extrapolate to this.
But when I use a word that everyone used until 5 minutes ago, that now the politically correct censors won't let us use, when I use that word, what I am saying is I will not ascribe to your left-wing censorship regime. And you're right, it might put some people off. It'll at least raise their eyebrows, even if they're not offended. I don't think many people are actually offended by it, but it'll raise their eyebrows at least at first. But the consequence of that will be that it will start to crack away at the left-wing censorship regime, which uses a cycle of euphemisms to constantly change the words that we're allowed to use for anything.
I would disagree. I think it would cause a lot of people to check out immediately. They would hear you saying something like this and immediately think, oh, it's one of these guys. Anything he says
my speech has a lot of views on it.
Anything you say after that, then you're going to tune out or not take as seriously as saying, I disagree with the concept of marriage because of this. To me, that sounds a lot more eloquent and a lot more sophisticated than saying, oh,
and understanding, which is, I feel like, the number one thing that you need to be if you're trying to persuade other people.
I guess my evidence to the contrary is I've given many long lectures using very dry language on all of these questions, and you've never seen any of them, and none of those clips have ever gone viral.
So then
and you have a conversion rate.
It's
on those,
not merely for attention. It's so that
your message
important
gets heard.
point is heard by people in a precise and just way.
But then I think it's also, do you want your message to be heard, or do you want it to impact the people in a positive way that you would like to get your message across? Because getting attention and just saying crazy stuff will get crazy attention.
I don't think I'm saying any crazy stuff. I think I'm saying very reasonable, true stuff.
But just taking to the extreme and saying, I'm going to say something that'll get attention, that will do well on social media, versus I'm going to say something, it's not going to get as much attention, but the people who watch it will take my ideas into consideration. It'll make more of an impact than saying something.
I think that my CPAC speech dominated the national discourse for at least a week after I gave it. And it wasn't exclusively my CPAC speech. It was Matt Walsh's What is a Woman movie. It was the work of TERF radical feminists I'm really not taking credit for all of this. But I do think that my speech at CPAC and the positive way that it was received by the American right and a lot of the American middle, and the screeching, crazy reaction that came from the left and the lies that came from the establishment media, helped to expand the window of discourse and helped to move that issue more in our direction. And it's led to laws that have been proscribing the transgender ideology in public life. So I think it was very persuasive, and it did get people's attention. It did. I actually didn't intend for it to get that much attention, but it did. And I think that's a good thing. And yes, the libs are going to accuse me of all sorts of things, genocide or whatever. But it's ridiculous, and reasonable people know that's ridiculous. Just as when I say that, a guy saying that my wife gets to run the whole show at home and I don't have a say, I say, that's kind of gay, man. I don't think that homosexuals at home are saying that awful, terrible man, he wants to throw me off a roof like the Taliban. No, they're saying, okay, he's using a word that we don't use as much in the last 5 years, but a lot of people have used for a long time, and he's using it in a derogatory way because he's criticizing an action of a husband with his wife, and he's using it in a precise way because he's saying that that view of sexual relations is essentially the same view as the gay view, which is that men and women are basically the same. So I think it operates on a lot of levels, and the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. I'm happy to give a really dry academic lecture, but that message is not going to penetrate.
I tend to believe that you could spice up your message without alienating even 1 or 2% of your audience, whatever that may be, without using...
What do you mean by alienate?
I think when you say the term, that's gay. I think the people who would be really receptive to you and want to hear what you have to say might tune you out at that point.
Why? Because they think that I disapprove of the sexual revolution?
I think that you would use terms that maybe are not...
it's just an aggressive term.
It is. I'd say
when did it become an aggressive term?
It doesn't matter how you're transmitting it.
No,
right?
I'm just
But
asking when
matters-
it became an aggressive
how
term.
it-
I'm
but it's
saying
how
that's
it's
not even a
received.
part of this discussion. I'm saying it matters how it's received.
Well, all right, but I got to get an answer to this question. You're saying it's an aggressive term. That's very shocking for me to hear. For
Right,
my
it
whole life, that wasn't an aggressive term.
Right, but
so
now
when
it
did
is.
When did it become an aggressive term?
Probably in the last couple of years.
Exactly. Exactly. So what are we going to do? Are we going to accept the radical redefinition of basic words by the left and just play along with their words? And what, pretty soon I'm going to start calling Bruce Jenner she or Caitlyn. And then I've accepted transgenderism. Because here's the point. When you use the language framed by your ideological adversaries, you accept their whole premise. When you start talking about the right to marriage equality rather than the meaning of marriage, there's no debate to be had. You've already accepted that two men can marry one another just as a man and a woman can marry one another. You've already accepted that. You're just asking who has the right to do it. You've lost the debate. The moment that you call Bruce Jenner Caitlyn, that's a girl's name, or if you call Bruce Jenner she, especially, you've accepted the premise of transgenderism. And you're right. If I call Bruce Jenner he, people are going to recoil at that. I'm going to alienate 1% of the audience by saying that because I'm not supposed to call him Bruce. I'm not supposed to call him him. I guess I'll alienate some radicals, but I will show the vast majority of the audience the reality as I see it, which I think is
so that's
correct.
what I've been trying to understand this whole time, is that if you're optimizing for impact, you think that your route would be more impactful than maybe the other.
You're giving me way too much credit. You're making me out to be some big strategist calculator of every piece of rhetoric I use. It's not that complex. I just endeavor to tell the truth. I endeavor to speak the truth, and I endeavor to speak the truth in really plain terms. I'm with George Orwell on this. Politics in the English language. We should use simple terms. We should use Saxon words over Latinate words when we can. We should use terms that are vivid, and I guess we call that aggressive. But George Orwell would say it's plain. It's clear. It presents to people reality, because if we don't use that, if we just use the euphemisms and the mealy-mouthed politically correct words, then people are going to continue to see a fantasy. If we talk about an illegal alien, then we know that's the kind of person who has no right to be in the country. If we talk about an undocumented future American dreamer, well, that paints a picture for you, whether you're aware of it or not, of someone who has absolutely every right to be in the country, probably more than you do. If we talk about she, the trans woman, well, she has every right to go into that bathroom. She's a she. If we say it's a he and he's a dude and he's wearing a dress and that man has no right to go into the bathroom. The clarity here in language, you might call it aggressive. I think it's the only option.
I'm not saying that I personally find that aggressive. I'm saying in the way that it's received and digested in the people
This is the key. You think the language is just fine. You probably think
I'm not
the language is
labeling it either way.
You just said you don't think it's aggressive.
I said I'm not
I'd probably be more
but
against
it's at least not aggressive. Or you think it is aggressive.
I think it
or you're just not
is
willing
what
to
the
say.
impact is, probably.
No, I'm asking what you think, man.
I think if someone told me that, no, I wouldn't be, super sensitive to it.
And I think basically everyone is like you. And I think that we're all just afraid of offending some hypothetical third party that doesn't really exist. And I think that is how the left controls the whole dialogue, because we're all normal guys. And everyone you talk to, even if they say, I'm a gay guy, or I'm a this thing, or I'm a that thing, or whatever. I don't know what language they're supposed to use now, but very few people actually get offended by any of this stuff. It is the fear, the hypothetical fear of offending the other, that keeps us all trapped in this linguistic prison, living in a web of lies, rather than just speaking the truth clearly, truth that we can all basically perceive.